Okay, I believe I'm recording. Today is November 10th, 2017. This is the scheduled meeting of ITSE 2309 at Collin College. And today, excuse me, today we have assigned test 2. I have at this point enabled the link to test 2. Go to modules. So under the module test 2 review and exam, you should see a link that's a Canvas item that says test 2, okay to open this page. And since it's okay, you do not begin the test when you open this page. And I'm not going to read it to you, but basically down at the bottom, it says in red, you are about to begin the test when you follow this link. So if I followed that link, that would start the time on the test. The test will be available from now until 9:30 on Sunday evening. That will be November 12th at 9:30 p.m., at which point it will lock. When you start the test, when you access the test, you will have 2 hours to finish it. The test document will not lock at 2 hours. However, there will be a some time penalty. I'm going to see, how well people do on it and that sort of thing. If you are almost done with the test and running into the 2-hour limit, go ahead and finish the test. You'll probably do better thus. Let's see. You're going to open a file named, what did I say to name it? test2.sql or something like that. Using your favorite notepad, create the file test2.sql. And I would appreciate it if you would write the script in such a way that I can just run it. That's what I do first is run it and look for any errors. And if you comment all of your questions, it doesn't run. Let's see, it contains 10 items. You will complete 8 of these for the test document. So you'll find 10 questions. You may choose which 8 items to complete. Some people are overachievers. If you turn in more than 8, I will grade all of them and base the grade on that number. I will not only count the 8 that are right. So, for example, if you complete all 10, each one will be worth 10% instead of 12.5%. I would decide which 8 I wanted to turn in. But if you don't give me any way to tell, as some people won't, I will grade all 10 of them and base the grade thus. Put your name in it. Please don't put Stephen W. Smith in there. That's not your name. It says to put your name. Use your own name, of course. If you don't like the format of my heading, change it to where you do like it. Please do not open a different file for each query. Please do not zip the file. And the file name. Please number each exercise clearly in a comment and skip some space between them. The stylistic thing about not skipping space only applies inside of an SQL statement. Between them is fine. Please be sure to end each statement with a semicolon. When you finish, the entire file should run or not run as an ASCII script or as an SQL script. During the test, you have access to textbook, notes, computer resources. You may not use email or any other form of communication. A query may or may not produce any output and still be correct. I don't think all of these necessarily select any lines. That doesn't mean that they're not correct. And since I'm asking some time questions, you might want to refresh your tables by running the create AP SQL script before the test. This won't really change anything. You won't be right or wrong based on that script, because I will have an up-to-date script when I run them, and I will see the answers. And let's see. If you do a join, I do not want to see the word join unless it is preceded by the term inner or outer. And I believe those are the instructions. If you have any questions, got the audio on, so if you unmute your audio, I should hear you. Not everybody has a microphone, so if you want to send a chat, I'm seeing something here from the inbox. I don't want to follow that while I have the screen shared. I can quickly. Okay, I have a email message from someone that's not going to be able to come to class today. I'm going to go ahead and respond to that and say it's okay. Just a couple of minutes ago. Go ahead and respond. It's not a real personal thing. That's fine. Oops, something didn't happen. Okay. Practice test 2 is due. So if you're going to turn it in, it's time to do that. The solutions are posted. And I'll take any questions now.
Professor, could we go over practice test 2, number 2?
Practice test 2, number 2. I'm going to open the solutions. Well, let me see what the question was.
Okay.
Let's go over practice test 2. Number 2, write a select query that returns invoice ID pairs that have the same account number. This would be a let me read this. Okay, this is either going to be a correlated subquery or a table joined with itself. You could do it either way. So let's see how I chose to do it. Well, if I can copy it here. Copy. I'm getting a handle on what I have here. It looks like I have an older syntax. Select. Okay, no, I don't. So I'm selecting the invoice ID, and the account number from invoice line items. So here, this particular one is I'm using an inner join. I'm using a joining the table with itself on the account numbers. It didn't copy over real well. All right. Okay, I have chosen to return the pairs. So I've got ID 1, that's invoice ID 1, invoice ID 2. Both of these come from different tables because the table is joined with itself. So I'm going to look at the from first. The information I need is in the invoice line items table. Therefore, I have invoice line items joined with itself, IL1 and IL2. So I'm selecting the invoice ID from one of them, the invoice ID from the other one, and I'm throwing in the account number. I don't recall whether I said explicitly to include that or not. So they are interjoined on the account numbers being equal. And this line right here where the invoice ID number 1 does not equal the invoice ID number 2. In other words, I want to suppress the fact that invoice ID 3 will be paid from the same account number as invoice ID 3. So everything would match with itself. When I run this, I get quite a few rows here because you get some, for example, I've got 1952. Somewhere down here, I will also have 52 and 19. So I will get them in the reverse order. 1968, somewhere I will have 68 and 19. Here we go, line 5 is line 1 reversed. So there's going to be quite a few of those in there. So this gives me some extra data. I am getting returned from this one, and I believe I said that in the instructions, I'm getting 3,776 rows returned. Your mileage may vary if you have changed your data any. But this particular one, anytime that we're looking for find people who live in the same city, find pairs of people living in the same city, is a very similar problem. So this says find invoice ID pairs that come from the same account number. And there's quite a few of those because of the fact that for each one that you get, you will also get it duplicated. The where clause on line 6, if we didn't have that, I would return invoice ID 119 invoice ID 2, 19, account number 160. So I would have extra stuff. One way that you could consider this, you could put in an you could say where invoice ID 1 is less than invoice ID 2. 1 and 2. I believe this will give us good information. It probably be a good thing to do. So as I execute this, I'm going to get fewer. Yes, so notice I got quite a bit fewer rows. And notice that now I just get 1952, 1968, 52, and 68. So I have suppressed the duplicate rows. So actually, I think that's the way to go on this one, to keep them to say strictly less than, and then I get 1,888 rows.
So this one would be better than the less than.
Yes, I believe the less than would be better than not equal to. For some reason, I was just thinking in terms of not equal to, but the less than would be better because that would suppress the duplicate rows 19, 52, and then you also get 52 and 19.
Okay, thank you.
So I think I would make that change to the solution. It would be a better solution. If you did it with the not equal to, it would still be correct.
Okay. I also had number 6 and the practice test 2. Because I know other students were having a little bit of a problem with it, so. And I did too, so.
Number 6.
Yes.
Yes. Let me open in a new tab. I guess I'm open. Oh. Because it's hidden behind my. That's okay. That'll work. And I'm going to open practice test 2. Write a select query that will return vendor ID, invoice number, invoice total from the invoice table, where the invoice total is less than the average for that vendor ID. Okay. This one suggests a subquery to me. For that vendor ID. So return vendor ID, invoice number, invoice total from the invoices where the invoice total is less than the average invoice total for that vendor ID. So it's the for that vendor ID that causes this one to be a correlated subquery. Let's see if I can get a better copy on this one. I'm getting terrible copies. Let me try a shift click. It's not working either. I'll probably get it. And again, select average. Okay. I got vendor ID, invoice number, invoice total that was given to me from invoices as I have to alias this one as I1 where invoice total greater than all. And I said I wanted to use the all here because you could have said greater. Now select average of the invoice total from invoices. This one has to be named and it's in the where. This is what makes it a correlated subquery. because I'm reaching outside of, let me get this formatted. Order by vendor ID subtotal. I don't recall whether I said that or not, but turn on the lights here. From invoices, where vendor ID 1 is vendor one ID, excuse me, invoices 1 vendor ID is equal to invoices 2 vendor ID. So in other words, as we go through the outside from within this, I'm referencing the outside table from within the subselect. So I have to give them their own names because I can see this I1 vendor ID from the outer query in the inner query. So I'm using that to group them essentially. I don't think I have to have a group by in this one. Let me see what I get. Now I get 36 rows. And I should only have one instance of the vendor ID. So 34, I should not have, I should not have this duplicate vendor ID 37. I think I need a group by in there. And which one? I don't think it really matters. I was wondering about that as I was looking at it. I thought that needed a group. Oops. Okay, it's not going to let me group by the outer, so I'll group by the inner. I don't believe that's going to make any difference to it. I don't really understand why I'm getting these two. Oh, okay, the invoice numbers. Invoice total is greater than the average. Okay, I could get invoice numbers. So this would be, if this invoice number was greater than the average for vendor ID 37, I would get two of them indeed. I don't, so this group by isn't really going to do anything for us. I think I'm going to get the same output whether I have the group by or not. I should get the same 36 rows. For example, vendor ID 121 has 1, 2, 3, 4 invoices that are greater than the average invoice for vendor ID 121. Questions?
No questions right now. Thank you for explaining that one.
Very well. The correlated subquery is the typical one. You recognize a correlated subquery by that idea of for each. Let me see if I can get back to. Right, select query where vendor ID returns something from the invoices table where the invoice total is less than the average invoice total for that vendor ID or for each vendor ID. So that's kind of the buzzword that cues you to the correlated subquery. Now, if on a test I want to see a correlated subquery, I will give you the hint that this is a correlated subquery. And the thing that makes a correlated subquery is you have a table on the outside of it that is referenced in the subquery. And that's what makes it correlated. There are some of the exercises where I call for a correlated subquery that some students have shown me that, in fact, and I agree with them, that it can be done without a correlated subquery, which would be good. On this one, I don't believe you can. Quite often you can do a join. You can treat an outer join as a subquery or a vice versa. So lots of times there are options on the on it to do it other ways than with a subquery. I tend to think in subqueries when I'm writing joins, but you should be able to go either way.
I also had a question about like number 9 for the date diff. Can we do that one? Just go over that one.
Surely. Yeah, write an SQL select query that will return the invoice number, payment date for every invoice paid in the last 30 days, mean that it's between 0 and 30 days prior to today. Do not return rows with a null payment date. And this says if you refreshed your data, meaning right away, you should have 34 rows returned. And I see I have forgotten to close my parentheses there. Well, that's just the way it's going to be. This one should be fairly straightforward. The only tricky part in it is getting today's date. And that's covered in the textbook pretty well. Let's go to my solutions.
I ended up getting 30 rows returned.
Well, that's not unusual.
Okay.
Let me see what I get here. Select invoice number, payment date from invoices where. I usually tab there, date difference. In other words, the difference from D. There's the way that you talk about today. So if you look up how to do a date difference, that's the difference between today and get date. Okay. So where it is less than or equal to 0, meaning that if that's negative, they're due in the future. So if this difference were negative, it'd be due in the future. And I always have to go back and think about that. Basically, it subtracts D from get date. And if that were a positive number, then it's a future date. If it's a negative number, it's a date in the past. And where it is greater than or equal to negative 30, there's probably a better way to say that. There's certainly other ways to say that. So I'm saying where it's in the past. Make sure I'm reading it correctly. Paid in the last 30 days. In other words, it's got a due date. It's not in the future and not null. So this, the first one, my first one anyway, rules out anything in the future. This rules out anything greater than or equal to negative 30, anything over 30 days in the past. Now, you could do a between here. Between would also work. I pointed out I don't do a lot of between. Let's see what I get. I'm getting 0 rows. Probably because I have not run my let me open. I haven't run the query. I'm going to have to. Let's see, where have I got that? Under documents. I'm going to have to find my SQL file. I don't want to sit here and fool with it. You could have said, you could have used a between here. So I think it would have been pretty easy to have said between, let's see, this one's, and it really doesn't matter which one you say. Let's see, between does not take a parentheses, it's just between and. I'm going to break it down just because I don't like it running off the end of the page. I think the between would take out this, would rule out the nulls because a null is not between those two dates. So I think you could lose the null. I think you could write it just like this would also be correct, because I don't think you have to say is not null. I'm probably still going to get 0 rows returned because I have not refreshed my data set. Let's see. Okay, this would work. Have I got that cast right? There we go. It could be done this way. The problem with it is that it's trying to convert. There's a conversion issue here. It can be written this way, though, but I'm just going to stick. This is the simplest one, and this is the way I usually think. So I think that this is the probably the easiest and best way to write it, where the difference is positive. Excuse me, the difference is negative, and the difference is greater than negative 30, and not null. Questions?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Like I say, the test you have until Sunday at 9:30 p.m. to get it turned in. And once you start, you have 2 hours is the thing to remember. You can, if you go over on the 2 hours, there will be a penalty. If you are just about to turn in, go ahead and go over if you have to. You'd be doing better off. And let's see. So the test isn't going to time out on you. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it possible to look over my SQL query for the number 9? I could put in the chat if you wish.
What do you? I'm sorry, I didn't get that last.
Oh, I was asking if it would be possible to look over my number 9 in practice test 2, just to see if mine is similar and works the same way as what you just did.
Okay, practice test is only a 5-pointer, and typically speaking, I don't really go deeply into it.
Okay.
But I will for you.
If you please.
Yeah, just go ahead and submit. I have some students here that are wanting some questions, so I will. If I see any, if they raise any questions, I'll come back on. Otherwise, I'm gonna stop recording now, but I'm gonna leave the session open.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm pausing the recording. I may come back to record more. I'm just going to do the pause recording as of now.